Okay, in this demonstration, we're going to take what we were working on and we're going to turn it into something that's responsive, because right now it's not really working. It kind of breaks. So to keep something responsive, it's going to work on all device sizes and browser sizes. So what is responsive? Responsive designs will reflow content properly on all screen sizes. All pages start off responsive, by the way. Pages stop being responsive when designers break the flow by forcing layouts on the page. Okay, so the way that we can basically fix the things that we break and make sure that it still reflows properly is we use media queries. This is an example of a media query that says media screen and max width 840 pixels. It could be min width 840 pixels. It could be a range of values. It could be a lot of things. And then the point is, though, inside you put complete rules. So what we're probably going to end up doing is going and finding those things that are floating side by side that don't work really well, and we're going to make them not float anymore. We're going to do some other stuff to them. And basically they work on browser conditions. Okay, so let's look at what we have here. And as I said before, you know, this just doesn't look good, right? It's too small. If it were on a phone, it would be impossible to read. Everything sort of loses its hierarchy. And also we're losing the majority of, or at least, yeah, the majority of our link words. So we need to fix all that. I'm going to jump over into our CSS page, and I'm going to get rid of this uh, toggle left thing, the drawer as they call it. So let's go down here, and at the bottom of the page, that's where we can load our media query, at least to begin with. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and we're going to call it media query rules. Okay, so the media query, we need to figure out where basically our stuff starts breaking down, okay? And that's really the best way to figure it out. You'll read a lot of things that say there are certain breakpoints, standard breakpoints, and you know, that's kind of true, but that's going to change constantly depending on the current device sizes that are popular. So no matter what, there's so many different device sizes that you should really just figure out where it breaks and fix that. So what I'm going to do is I can do an inspector thing, so I can inspect the element. And while I am dragging it, you'll see in the top right corner of my browser window, it tells me the pixel dimensions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to see where my navigation up here actually starts to break down. And it looks like it's breaking down probably right in this area. Probably, I would say 800. So, you know, I'm going to take 800 is the place that it needs to change, where, you know, the floats need to stop floating and this stuff needs to do something different. Maybe it needs to turn into a collapsible menu. Okay, so we'll say that our media query size is going to be 800. The way that you write that rule is going to be the @ symbol. So you say @media, and then you would say screen, because this is going to pertain to screen dimension issues, not print or something else, with the word and, okay? And then is where your condition is going to go in parentheses, and then you're going to have your opening and close curly braces. Inside of these parentheses, we're going to put our condition, and that's going to be, in this case, max width 800 pixels is what we decided, where our stuff starts to break down. And the reason that we say max width is because we're going to start basically taking some of the rules that we wrote up here, and we're going to start changing them down here inside of this media query, so that basically the page will load as a large page, but then before it finishes loading, if the screen dimension is you know, smaller than 801 pixels, let's say, because it's a max width of 800, then it's going to change these rules. It's going to override the previous rules, but only if the screen is this dimension. So let's figure out the first things that we need to change, and I would suggest that we change the easy stuff first, which are going to be those floats in the content section. So let's look here, and the first thing off the bat I see is that we've got section, div, screenshot, and then we have this information. I'm going to just copy this whole thing. We're going to come down below, and I'm going to paste it. And I'm going to change the stuff. And by the way, I'm going to tab the stuff in so that I can see the hierarchy. I'm going to change the things that need to be changed. So where it says float, I'm going to change left to none because I don't want it to float. And then width, let's say that it's going to be, let's just say 100% for right now. Actually, if we think about it, we have padding on each side, so that's 6% total. And if we wanted to be smart about it so that we don't make it bigger than our actual screen dimension, we'd say 94% to get to a total of 100%. Okay, and then we can leave the padding the same because that's not changed. You can either leave that here or you can just get rid of it and know that it's going to be the same. Okay, and then the other thing that we needed to modify is this one where we have section, article, site info, and it's saying that it's going to float. So I'm going to copy that and we're going to come down here and we're going to paste it. And again, I'm going to have to select this and tab it in. And again, I'm going to say float none. And width is also going to be 94 because I want these things to stack on top of each other. Now they need to be even. Okay, so they're not different widths any longer. So let's just save that and see what happens. Let's go over here, hit our refresh button, and if we make it smaller, you see it goes into a single column. Perfect. It's exactly what we were looking for. The only thing that I'm seeing is that I don't really like the way that this lines up here. So I probably need to push that an extra some number of percentage points in. And let's say maybe it's an extra 5%. I don't think I want to mess with the padding. I don't really want to do that. So it's in the article. I don't need to do anything with the screenshot. I think what we need to do is have a margin left. And that won't affect the total width of the entire screen or the entire section. It'll just make the text reflow sooner. So we're going to say margin left. Let's just try 5%. I'm not going to adjust any other margins. That's the only one I care about. And that looks probably a little bit better. You know, if we wanted it to be a little bit closer to this edge, it might be like maybe 4 or 4.5%. Let's try 4 and see what happens. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. So now what we have is something that whenever we get big enough, the float goes into effect. And when we get to our breakpoint, we get something that looks like this. It's perfect, okay? Really nice and easy. All right, so the next thing to tackle is going to be a little bit more challenging is this thing up here. So let's take a look at the way we have it set up. And you see that it collapses into something that's a menu. If I click it, it turns into this. I can make it go away. And basically, what we're going to do is we're going to use some JavaScript in combination with media queries and some CSS to basically take this menu right up here, which is the main menu for the the main top nav, and we're going to collapse it whenever it gets lower than 801 pixels, and it's going to collapse into this menu right here. And it's the same exact menu, but what's going to happen is through JavaScript and media queries and so forth, we're going to add a class to the existing unordered list so that it takes on these properties. Also, we're going to add something that's an additional list item right here that is hidden by default, but then whenever it's in this view, it shows up so that we can click it and close it, and then it goes away, and then we get to see this menu item again. And then, okay, it sounds super complicated, but it's really not that bad. I'm just going to walk you through it, okay? So let's focus right now first on just even getting this menu button to show up and making this other part just disappear, okay? So that's the easiest way to start. So let's jump back into our HTML view, and I want to create that button. Let's go back up to the top, sort of, like up near the H1. Okay, so in the nav section, I want to create the button right after this H1 because it's basically going to sort of replace this thing, this UL that's got all of our navigation in the smaller view. So I'm going to put that link right here, and it's just going to be a href, And I'm just going to make it refresh the page essentially so that it's a hashtag. And I'm going to have the word menu. Okay. And one last thing I want to do before I move on is I want to add an ID. It's going to be really important to have the ID on this A tag, this ahref tag. It's called menu. Okay, so the clickable part on the page is going to say menu all uppercase, but the ID in lowercase is going to be called menu. Okay, so that means I need to come over here, and inside of my max width rule, I need to create a rule that's going to style that menu button. So let's go ahead and I'm going to just paste some stuff in. Okay, and the reason I want to paste it is I don't want you to have to watch me type all this, but I will explain it. All right, so first thing is first is that an anchor tag is normally an inline element, so we want to turn it into something that looks like a block, so that it's like a button. And it can be, also it can take things like width and height and things like that. It can't otherwise unless it's block. And then we're going to also tell it to float right, because remember it's going to sort of be replacing of sorts, visually replacing this unordered list which floats right. So we want it to be in the same general area, so we're going to have it float right. Also, I'm going to put a border around it because statistics show that whenever you have a word that's supposed to be a button, a lot more percentage of people will actually understand that it's a button that's clickable whenever it has a line around it. Okay, so if it looks like a button, they think it's a button. So I'm putting a border around it. I'm giving it padding for the same reason. And you can look at these values and copy them or play with it yourself if you want. The color is going to be the color of the link text. Okay, don't have any text decoration. I'm telling it the font weight and all of this stuff, right? I want it to align center. These are all pretty basic things. The background color of the button is going to be this sort of really dark, almost black color. Yeah, so that's the way it's going to look. Let's save this and make sure that index is saved. And we're going to do a refresh here. And this is the way our new file looks. And you see here, don't worry about that. That thing that's hovering right now is because we haven't actually taken care of doing something different with our list item. So just don't worry about it right now. But the button is actually doing what it's supposed to do. And when we get bigger, that's okay too. Don't worry about that. We haven't taken care of it yet. All right. In a bigger view, it's going to go out of its breakpoint. Okay. Okay. But while we're at it, notice that it doesn't have a hover state. So let's go ahead and fix that. So right beneath that, I'm going to go ahead and we'll say nav top, and then it's a hash menu. But I forgot that it's actually colon hover because it's the hover state. All right, and I'm going to paste in a rule so that the color is this light blue color. We'll save it and refresh, and then when you hover, you see that the menu word turns blue. You could also make the background change to a color if you wanted to. It's up to you. Okay, now the other thing that we need to do is that we need to make sure that that button doesn't show up in the bigger view, like here. See, it's here. We want that to disappear. So basically what we need to do is we need to make a rule outside of this media query that tells this that it's display hidden. So I'm going to copy this and let's go up where it makes sense to put it. And I think it makes sense to put it up here, like right here, right after we're doing the spans in the H1. And the reason is because it literally comes next in the HTML. It makes sense to go and find it there. So I'm going to create the rule right here, and we're going to say display none. And what this is going to do, I'm actually going to comment this out too. So I'm going to borrow this comment, and we're going to say menu button hidden over, let's say 800 pixels. So anything, any screen dimension over 800 pixels, and it's automatically going to hide it. This is not a media query, this is the natural state. It's not until the media query down below that it actually changes the nature of that button and makes it display block. Okay, so save it, test it, hit refresh, and you see it disappears on the larger view. And then when we hit that media query, there it is. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to relate this menu button to the overlay menu.